Calling Penn One board to order. Take the roll. Let's see, Tom Collette,
Present.
Annalise Kohler,
Present.
Jeff Noodleman,
Present.
and I'm Claudio Camposano, present, and we should be getting one more member shortly. Oh, PJ Christopher will let us know when he's present. So we've got, let's see. So I think we're here today for just one agenda item. I don't know who wants to introduce it, but it's really to discuss the revenue plan for the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District. There's a meeting of that interim board in a few days, and so we really wanted to talk about, take a moment to talk about that revenue plan and sort of what that what the resolution is on the table for the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board, because we have our member on that board, who is Rochelle Altman, who's joined us today, and we wanted to have a discussion as a board, and then provide her with some direction on our thinking with regard to the vote in 2 days. Does that sound about right, folks?
Sounds good. I can just give a quick overview of what the proposal on the table is and answer any questions. And Lori is here if we want to get into any of the details. But what is most immediate is for September 21st, which is Thursday, the Urban Board has a proposed motion in front of them in a staff recommendation, which is to seek legislative modifications to ORS 550, which is the enabling legislation of the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District. And those legislative modifications are for two things. One is to be able to transfer the assessments, so that's the property assessments that the legacy, the current, your district currently apply on the managed floodplain, to be able to transfer that assessment and ability to levy the assessments to the Urban Board. It's not currently a part of the legislation, even though it was in earlier legislative concepts. And then to create intergovernmental flood safety benefit tax. That would be for all of the districts. So the district is all of Multnomah County within the urban growth boundary. And that would recognize the general benefit that the district and all of the economy and the generator benefits that are realized outside of the district provide for everyone within that full district boundary. And so in total, that is about $6 million that would be collected, assessed to the, basically billed to the cities is how the concept would be right now. And then they would have some flexibility as far as how they would apportion that amongst their either ratepayers or citizens. And so a few details, the property assessment would be subject to tax compression, just as the current assessments are. So it doesn't remedy some of the issues that we had hoped to remedy with the service fee model or utility fee model. It is something that is very familiar to all of the property owners within the managed floodplain. It's something that we have used for the last century plus. So it's definitely something that is reliable. It is collected on the Multnomah County property tax bill that all the property owners receive. And so it has a really high compliance rate. And it's something that does not sort of unleash some of the unforeseen issues of tax compression, as far as some property owners having to have rapid increases in their assessment, as well as they currently can write off their property tax bill service fee that would come in quarterly on a utility bill, especially for residential property owners would not be able to write that off. And so it creates some political challenges. We have brought the list of challenges to the Urban Board and the due diligence effort. And I think that's important for this board to also understand Wendy sent out the September 6th board packet that went to the urban board, and that laid out some of the due diligence effort that the staff and other board members have done to really try to make the service fee as written into the statute work. And it doesn't work for a number of reasons. Largely, they are technical as well as some political and possible legal issues. And so given that due diligence effort, staff over the last 6 to 9 months has worked hard to come up with something that would be that we could implement. And I think that's really important. Something that is politically feasible, that doesn't have undue cost shifts, and also is more fair, and then something that we can implement and be able to collect the funding. And that was a real challenge with the service fee. We just could not figure out a way to reasonably collect it or to responsibly collect it, because direct billing or doing things like that would be extremely expensive. Yeah, and I guess I can pause there and dive deeper into any of the details around what the two proposals are. And I can also provide a little bit of a timeline, kind of upcoming, what the next steps are. But what it boils down to is that we're asking the urban board to give staff the direction to pursue these legislative modifications. It doesn't guarantee that we'll find a bill, doesn't guarantee that the legislative session will even happen or come to a successful conclusion, but it does give us the path forward to be able to move now. And the reason why moving now is important is because we're moving forward with asking the board to refer a bond on the May 2024 ballot, and that general obligation bond, to be able to successfully sell the bond, we are going to have our revenue, operating revenue set up, and we'll basically need to make both of these things move forward at the same time. So I'll stop there and answer any questions. And Lori, is there any details left out?
No, I think you covered it well. So really the decision that's on the plate for the board this week is just moving forward with trying to get the legislative changes, and the other decisions around form of revenue, allocation of revenue, rate increases, those will all come later in the process. So the board will be considering those questions down the road.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Great job as always, Colin. One comment, one question, anecdotal perhaps. The one comment is, while you are absolutely right about the impact on residential customers, don't forget the impact on commercial property owners is just as staggering too when assessments go up, especially with large property owners, but nonetheless. Refresh my memory in the current and or old days, the percentages of, just call it, unpaid assessments, it was relatively low, as I recall. So
yes.
So yeah, go ahead. And I guess the question is, did that play into your recommendations?
Absolutely. So collection cost is zero because the county puts the assessment on the property tax bill and they don't charge us for that. There's a 3% discount that folks can take advantage of with their property taxes if they pay by November 15th. So we do see the majority of the payments come in by that November 15th deadline. And so there's a 3% cost to us. And then collectability, the people that don't pay in year one, is about 2%. So we're collecting between 95 and 96% of our assessments in each year, which is pretty much not comparable to anything else that you can do. It really is an excellent way for us to be able to bring revenue in. So obviously the compression does have an impact, but overall the ability to collect is really, really strong when we work through the Multnomah County property tax collection.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Annalise, you were next.
Annalise?
Yeah, thank you. I think this makes a lot of sense. And, it is just the first step in a series of steps we will need to take. And it, doesn't solidify anything, but I think it is always good to grow the toolbox of possibilities. I think we'll be successful if we all are marching down there hand in hand to Salem. So I think that's a discussion for kind of later on, but want to talk about that too. The other piece, Colin, I just wanted to make sure I understood. So the bond that's being referred in May, or on the ballot in May, sorry, that, sorry, you said we will not be able to sell the bond until we have identified the long-term revenue source and it's in place?
So that really is a technicality that comes along with public issuance of bonds. And we actually have, I encourage you all, if you have time, to come to the meeting this week with the Urban Board, because our financial advisor, Carol Samuels, as well as our bond counsel, are coming to talk very specifically about those technicalities behind issuance of a bond. So when you issue publicly, so when you sell those financial instruments publicly, you need to get a rating. And the rating agencies, even though this is a bond that's backed by property tax, the rating agencies look at the financial viability of the organization that's issuing. Doesn't make any logical sense because the property tax is what pays those bonds, but they really are looking at that financial viability. And so what they've advised us is that it will be very difficult to get a reasonable rating on those bonds until we have the district up and running and have those revenue sources in place. So we're thinking strategically with them about what that means. We've looked at the cash flow for the bonds. We will probably look at a very small kind of alternate form of issuance for year one of the GEO bonds. And then when we've been up and running with the district for a year, we'll come back around and actually do a public offering for the next round. The cash flow is looking like it will be supportive of that, but that doesn't mean that we can wait a year to be able to get this all put together. We need to get this put together now so that we have that, can show that strong financial control, strong financial capacity for that first year, so that the rating agencies will feel confident that we have the ability to manage those financial instruments so that they are secure for the investors.
That's super helpful, Lori. And I mean, makes a ton of sense, and so much that bond stuff makes sense. I just trying to understand, say we don't get a long-term revenue solution in place by, July 1st of 2024, what happens? How long can the bond just sit there until we decide to sell it? Like how does that kind of work?
We can, so you don't, it's not like the voters approve the bond and then the next day you issue all of them. You can time it, and there's not like a ticking clock. The ticking clock for us really is being able to do that local match for the PMLS projects.
Okay.
It's being able to do some of those other projects that we have on the list for the bond that need to be done. And it really is kind of that upfront, like, let's get things stable, because we know by year two, we've got to issue a big chunk of that money, and we do need to take that to a public markets. We won't be able to find a bank that will buy the level of bonds that we're going to need in that second year.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
All right. Well, we're joined by Rochelle, our representative of the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board, but also, or the interim board, but she's also the coordinator of citywide efforts of all things levy, and has really been helping us steward the conversation internally, because obviously the solutions that are being put forward would put the burden on the local jurisdictions to collect the flood safety benefit tax. Did I get that right? Is that what we're calling it? Flood safety benefit? Okay. And so in a second, I'll just maybe have Rochelle just talk a little bit about sort of our efforts to make sure that we as a city have some alignment there. Obviously, we continue to be in a five council member form of government. So getting full alignment is always interesting. But I just wanted to also note, on Lori's comments about collectability, just for folks to be aware, sort of the comparable in terms of a new tax started up, just, and sending out bills for the first time, bills people have never seen coming from somebody they didn't expect to hear from, asking for money. The arts tax, I think, was something like 60%, 65% collectability in its early years. So, so when you think about just non-payment, it rockets up, and you look at the cost of collection itself for this small amount of money. It makes a lot of sense from just a board member's perspective and from a finance perspective. But before I hand it over to Rochelle for a second, Tom, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted, if we're looking for a legislative fix here to be able to move forward with this, I kind of wanted to see if anybody had been in contact with like the legislature or members of the legislature in terms of like what that pathway looks like. I know that things are going to be coming in hard and fast this year because there was a lot of stuff that didn't get through last year. And if we're queued up for that, because when I'm thinking about the timing of everything here, like we're going to probably want a pretty strong chance of success in moving this through in the short session to be able to realize all the other things you have planned.
Tom, that is a great point. While they were able to close out the 23 session successfully, there was a lot of things that were under pressure with the walkout and kind of the rush at the end. And so we have a lobbyist, a contract lobbyist that is helping us navigate that. And so what we're looking for is a committee bill. And there's a couple committees that we've worked with in the past and have a good track record, just being able to work really proactively and positively with them. And so our goal is to have a committee bill. There's only a very small, less than a handful of personal bills that any of the legislators have, and there can be a lot of competition. And so that's what we'll move forward with. We need to have a legislative concept in, I believe, on November 9th. And so if we get the green light September 21st from the Urban Board, we'll be pulling together. We do have draft legislative language that we have circulated with different government affairs folks with the different jurisdictions. So you're representing the city government affairs, legislative affairs people have that. We'll need to bring everyone together and more purposely, the resolution language is really to allow for there to be some good collaboration and try to find what that path is. Because as Annalisa noted, we really need to go down to Salem hand in hand. And one of the sticking points that I think folks should be aware of is that when we created ORS 550, the goal was to get away from property assessments, and largely because of tax compression. And when you look at it in sort of a balkanized, isolated version where Pen 1 is on its own and not across the full district, it is really exacerbated because of so much publicly owned open space land. It's definitely smoothed out when you look at the full district, but we and Lori and her team, Angel is on here, have done an amazing job doing that compression analysis. And so we know what it is. We've been able to share that with the Urban Board. There is a small amount of tax compression shift that moves to the east because Sandy Drainage Improvement Company is not currently under compression because of how they're organized as a drainage improvement company. So we really need to work with the East County cities to make sure that they're being heard, that all the mechanisms for additional service fees and things like that that sort of smooth out some of that compression loss are heard. And then the other thing is this allows us to move forward and to keep up with the Army Corps of Engineers. It allows us to leverage $100 million, but it doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. Really, we have these additional tools in the toolkit. We have the service fee. We have the ability to use user fees. If there are better ways to approach that in the future, we should definitely continue to be open to that. But this does allow us to expand the toolkit, to use something that people are familiar with, and to be successful as far as a bond sale and moving forward with the Army Corps, and also with the consolidation of the districts for greater efficiency and fewer overlapping governments. There's manifold positive pieces here, but it's complex, and I think you know that.
Are you aware of any opposition at this time to this bill, or any major concerns out there?
I think we
Concept, I should say. We're not.
yeah, I mean, I think we just have to make sure that we're closely in sync with some of the statewide organizations that, you know, represent cities and counties and special districts, and make sure that everyone is tracking what we're trying to do and how narrow footprint we're trying to make. It's just the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District is geographically specific. There's only one in the state, and you can't create another one. And so we want to make sure that people are aware of that. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that it doesn't seem as slippery slope, or, you know, something that is applying statewide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there aren't other questions, I can say a few words about the engagement Portland's done with our leadership. Well, first we have the finance team, what we're calling it, of finance SMEs from around the city, particularly OMF and the city budget office, and looking at a whole suite of options for how the city would pay our share, approximately 80% of the flood safety benefit tax. And PJ, we've been in touch with Emerald Bogue and Alexandra Howard regarding the suite of options we're considering, which include the city's stormwater bill, but aren't limited to just using the stormwater bill. We're also looking at some other options. And we still need to do vetting with our city attorneys about what is possible from a legal perspective. So more to come on the exact revenue mechanism, or how the city will turn around and create a revenue mechanism to pay for our allocation. But we did, Nancy and Jim Middaugh and Colin, were you with us last week? Yes, Colin, we presented to the commissioners chiefs of staff last Tuesday, specifically on this legislative proposal and the upcoming new district board vote. And Bobby Lee came out, you know, sharing that the mayor's office is fully supportive of this proposal moving forward and of the PMLS project. And none of the chiefs raised concerns about moving forward. So just sharing that the city of Portland feels really positive about district staff moving forward with the legislative proposal that we'll be voting on. And then I also just wanted to make sure that you are all aware generally how I am coordinating to make sure I'm representing Penn 1 on all the issues that will come before the new board. Before each Penn 1 board meeting, I'm reaching out to Claudio to decide whether there are issues that warrant me attending your meeting. And when I have upcoming board votes, like the one this week, I reached out to Claudio so we strategized about how to get your input. And so that's why we're having this meeting today. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware that I'm coordinating closely with Claudio as the board chair to make sure I'm representing the views of the full board.
Yeah, and just generally, does that sound like a workable way of making sure that our interests as a board are represented on the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Interim Board?
And I'm of course always happy to meet one-on-one, and I would just make sure, just want to make sure that we stay in line with public meetings laws. But I know there's some issues that if I spoke with everyone, it could be treated as Colin, you said a consecutive meeting. So we'll just make sure we stay in compliance with those. But I'm assuming that we'll be in compliance, but happy to meet in a way that.
Yeah, but I do think that Wendy shares the Urban's agenda with us. So if folks do see something on there and you want to make sure that we have a chance to discuss prior to their meeting, and make sure that we've given Rochelle sort of our thoughts on it, please do call that out for my attention, and I'll make sure that we coordinate that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like right now, the legacy districts are meeting after the urban board meets the first Wednesday and then the third Thursday. But we know those agendas ahead of time, so we can always put that on your regular meeting. We won't have to keep calling special meetings if we can just look a little further down the line and see what issues you want to bring up.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And also this one seemed like a particularly important vote and particularly meaty topic. And I know that the staff has been doing an amazing job of reaching out to individual stakeholders, but just wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to discuss as a board and give clear direction to Rochelle, or as clear as we can get. I feel like we might even get to unanimity, but just make sure that we have an opportunity to provide her with that direction before you all sit down.
Okay, you'll see in that board packet a decision and non-decision timeline, and so the next big one is in December for consideration of referring the bond.
Great.
It's March where, tentatively at least, where the board will vote on the balance between revenue collected from the flood safety benefit tax versus the property assessment.
Do we have any other questions on the state legislation that we're looking to move forward, or on just our work with the urban board in general? All right, well, I think that was the only thing on our agenda. I'll note that we do not have to vote on giving Rochelle direction. But it does sound like yeah, it does sound like we're generally in agreement that that Penn 1 supports the efforts of the urban to pursue the state legislation, and it's great to hear that the city is working with elected officials to make sure that they understand that approach and support it. And it sounds like we're there. So all of that sounds really good to me. And other folks have any concerns? All right. Well, Tom.
Just a quick question, because I haven't been around very long. So this might be a question that has an obvious answer to everybody else. But if we were not able to achieve this legislation, do we have a plan B? What's the alternative for moving forward with the timeline and everything that's been laid out? Because I see a lot of different pieces that are dependent on each other. And I'm wondering what we would do if this were not taken care of in the short session, that's quite a word, and move forward.
Not silly at all, Tom. In fact, looking at participants, I've been around longer than everybody except Janet on this call, and I had the exact same thought. So well done, well done.
Great question. So we would, so hopefully by that point, the board would already refer the GEO bond, and we can still have that GEO bond pass. It's the issuance that would be the challenge. And so we would work through whatever issues, or, say there was, maybe the session didn't even come to successful close because of walkouts or something like that. There's a lot of unknowns. And so we would put something together for the long session for 2025. And it would delay. We would also need to figure out some of the capital funding, especially related to PMLS and some of the real estate acquisitions. We do have a plan to approach, but again, this is going to be in the 25 session. We have a plan to approach the state to provide some grant funding for that capital construction effort. But we'll need to find some of additional grant revenue or something similar that would float us to when we would actually be able to get that bond rating. So it is a challenge, but it's not, I guess, a dead end. It's something that would be ideal to have in the 24 session. We'd be able to manage into in the 25 session. One thing that is just a reality, and I think Penn 1 probably realizes it most acutely, but other districts as well, is that there's just fewer dollars available and basically spending down reserves and things like that. And so there's also a real timing challenge as far as operating revenue for the existing districts that we would have to manage into. I don't know, Lori, if you want to add anything additional to that.
Yeah, we're taking a look at cash flow currently, and that is really the other issue besides the bond timing and being able to keep up with our PMLS match payments, is that we have several of our districts that are running out of money, and that was an intentional decision years ago that they were going to ramp down on these fund balances, but we are really getting to the point where it's getting to be a bigger issue for each of the districts. So it definitely will be better if we can make this tight timeline work. Otherwise, we're really going to have some strategic discussions with our legacy boards about increases in assessments and how we can continue to sustain operations until we can get up and running with the urban board.
Thank you.
I think you said this, but just in terms of the way that we are currently approaching funding the PED local share, we're doing that through state grants that have been leveraged with drainage district funding. Some of that funding provided by external governments. So just can you remind me sort of how long does that sort of PED state and local funding carry us?
That carries us through. So we have so the PED phase is about 3.5 years, with generally with any of the kind of overages being tucked into the half year at the end there, right? And so through the state grants, through grant funding through the city of Portland, Metro, and the Port of Portland, with a huge amount of thanks, and then with the drainage district, basically budget, or the ratepayers contributions, we figured out the full 3 years of PED. The out year is something that will be what we need to figure out the final funding piece, and hopefully it'll be through bond funding. And then I think the important timing piece that is, it's not exactly sequential. You don't just finish PED and then you begin the construction phase. There's an overlap, and that is largely, we'll sign what's called a public partnership agreement. And that basically gives us the green light to start acquiring the real estate that's needed for construction. And that's why we need that geo bond package to come through. We need to acquire, at least for the first kind of installment or phase of the construction, to have all of the real estate instruments in line, and then we can start the construction. So they don't want to delay something because you're waiting for one easement, as an example. So that's where that overlap kind of challenge between PED and why we need the geo bond funding for the construction phase is a challenge that we're looking at.
Great, thank you. All right. Well, I think we've given Rochelle her direction, and I think if there are no other questions, do we have any other business? I think that was the only item. Any new business?
Just see you next week. I'm working on the regular format packet for next week. So
Great.
see you then.
All right. Well then, do we do a motion to adjourn, or do we just go ahead and adjourn?
We haven't been that formal, so.
Okay. Well then, I will just adjourn.
If it's controversial, someone should speak up.
Yeah.
You can vote
I
on
know
it.
you all just want to stay here, but no. So Pen 1 is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.